Jeffrey Dahmer, the serial killer you probably know about through the famous Netflix series, remained at large for 13 years before karma finally caught up with him. But what exactly stopped the ruthless cannibal in his tracks? Did he go to jail? And what went on behind bars? Here are the lesser-known details about how the notorious Jeffrey Dahmer met his end. Dahmer's arrest. First, we will talk about the night that Dahmer was finally arrested and taken into custody. As he had done with most of his other victims, on July 25, 1991, Jeffrey went to a bar and offered 3 men $100 to get them to pose for some nude photographs and have a drink or two back at his apartment. Tracy Edwards was the unfortunate man who decided to take Jeffrey up on his offer. Not only did he not know that he was walking into a killer's lair, but that he would be the one to bring about the end of his 13-year murder spree. As soon as Edwards stepped into Dahmer's apartment, his sixth sense kicked in and he realized something was not right. There were boxes of hydrochloric acid that Jeffrey excused by saying it was for cleaning bricks. There was also the smell of rotting flesh in the air that Tracy could not identify at the time, but it still felt off. However nervous, Tracy managed to remain calm as he continued to act clueless. He followed Dahmer to his bedroom when asked. This is when Jeffrey cuffed him to the bedpost and guided him on how to pose for the photos. Tracy fully realized the height of the situation he was in when Dahmer pulled a knife on him and threatened to cut out his heart and eat it. Edwards continued to keep up his act and nonchalantly asked to use the bathroom after 5 dragged-out hours. As soon as he caught Dahmer off guard, he punched him in the face and escaped. Such was his luck that he ran into 2 police officers as soon as he left the apartment building at the corner of North 25th Street. The cops followed Edwards back to the apartment. Upon investigation, they found graphic Polaroid photographs, including those of dismembered body parts. When they recognized Dahmer's apartment in the background of the Polaroids, they immediately took him into custody. Soon afterwards, the Milwaukee Police Investigation Bureau found a human head, several human skulls, 3 human skeletons, and dismembered muscles that were casually kept in the refrigerator along with Dahmer's regular food. Dahmer's prosecution. Jeffrey Dahmer stood trial for 15 counts of first-degree murder and was consequently sentenced to 15 life sentences in February of 1992. In May of the same year, he was given an extra life sentence for the murder of Stephen Hicks, who had been Dahmer's first ever victim 13 years prior. The families of the victims, along with the general public, protested that Jeffrey should be given the death penalty for his gruesome killings. However, this was not possible as that form of capital punishment has been abolished in the state of Wisconsin since 1853. One thing was clear, however. Jeffrey Dahmer would never breathe air as a free man ever again. For the duration of his trial, Jeffrey appeared incapable of expressing not only shame or regret, but any emotion at all. However, in a later interview, Dahmer claimed that if he could give his life in order to save all of his victims, he would. Time served in prison. For the first year of his lifelong sentence, Dahmer was kept in solitary confinement in order to protect him from his fellow inmates, as is common with most high-profile murderers. After that, however, he requested to be transferred to a lower security block. Dahmer was shifted to the Columbia Correctional Institution once this plea was accepted. In May 1994, Dahmer repented for his sins at his new residence after getting himself baptized as a reborn Christian. Despite his newfound faith, Jeffrey's family and anyone with common sense knew that he was walking towards his own death by serving his sentence in a low-security prison. The other inmates knew of his crimes as his case had been widely documented. Jeffrey, however, was now a new man unbothered by the dangers surrounding him. He was prepared to face any consequences that his actions lead him to, including death. In fact, it appeared he preferred death. He once expressed the feeling of sinning against God simply by still existing. Such was the guilt of his crimes. In July of 1994, as was expected, an inmate at the prison, Osvaldo Dorothy, took an attempt on Jeffrey's life by attacking him with a razor blade in the prison chapel after service ended. However, Jeffrey walked out of the incident with non-lethal injuries only. Christopher Scarver. Before revealing the details of Dahmer's murder, let's talk about the inmate who carried it out. Christopher Scarver can barely be considered any less than Jeffrey Dahmer himself. He was serving a life sentence for the murder he had committed in 1990. He had shot his co-worker Steve Lohman in the head 4 times after demanding a $3,000 check from his boss, who had initially refused to comply. The police took Scarver into custody soon after, at his girlfriend's house. He was holding the murder weapon along the check he had ultimately received. He had expressed to the officers at the scene that there were voices in his head that had urged him to carry out the killing. This was the same justification Scarver offered when questioned about why he had murdered Jeffrey Dahmer. Dahmer's death. Chris Scarver and some other inmates at the correctional facility did not take well to Dahmer. They were revolted by what they had seen on the news, what gruesome and inhumane crimes he had committed. And on November 24, 1994, Scarver seized his opportunity. He, along with Jeffrey and fellow inmate Jesse Anderson, was working in the gymnasium as per the prison work schedule. Initially, they were being supervised by 3 prison guards. After a while, however, all 3 of the guards took their leave. In hindsight, this action proves quite suspicious. Christopher, meanwhile, hid a 20-inch-long metal bar in his clothing that he had stolen from the gym. Once the 3 inmates got to cleaning the gymnasium bathroom, he struck. Scarver repeatedly beat Dahmer on the head with the metal bar and severely fractured his skull. The 3rd inmate, Anderson, was simply at the wrong place at the wrong time, and he suffered for it. In the heat of the moment, Scarver ended up brutally murdering him as well. Dahmer was discovered the next day at around 8 a.m., drenched in his own blood on the bathroom floor. When repeating the incident to the authorities, Scarver remarked that Jeffrey had not even tried to defend himself. It seems that in the end, Dahmer embraced death with open arms. Some of the victims' grieving families felt that justice had finally been properly served. Christopher Scarver ended up receiving grateful letters from many of them. Others were not as pleased with the situation, but had no choice but to accept it. Scarver's outcome. Now that Dahmer was dead, it was time for Christopher to face the music. He initially pleaded not guilty to both murders on the basis of insanity. He showed up in court acting bizarre and seemingly not mentally stable. After a psychiatric evaluation, however, he was considered fit to stand trial. 2 more life sentences were added to his time for the murder of Jeffrey Dahmer and Jesse Anderson. In retrospect, it is speculated that Scarver, who was African American, murdered Jeffrey on the basis of race, as most of Dahmer's victims had been young black men. While the atrocities committed by Jeffrey Dahmer are looked down with horror and disgust and push the limits of what we believe a human being can be capable of. Although Dahmer's death was undeniably gruesome, to most it was poetic justice. What do you think? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to like the video and subscribe for more.